And we are live. Welcome to episode 9 of the Razorburn podcast. Like always, I'm always here. To my left is Heather Melton of Zingari Man. And today we're joined by Scott of Declaration Grooming. How are you doing, Scott?
Locked down. How are you doing?
Pretty locked down too, I have to say.
All right.
Awesome. Let's actually, before we get into the icebreaker questions, let's do a bit of a rundown of kind of who you are and what you do, Scott, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Scott Stewart. I own and operate Declaration Grooming, which started out as L&L Grooming 4.5 years ago. Started in Georgia. I now live in Michigan, where we currently have the most deaths per capita from COVID-19
Shit.
right now.
Oh,
And I am
wow.
in like the hot zone in Southeast Michigan. I'm extremely Detroit adjacent. I'm maybe 1,500 feet from the county line of Wayne County, which is the county that Detroit's the county seat of. It's like right there. Uh, so yeah, anyway, I make shaving soap, shaving brushes, and aftershaves. I've had to pare my product line down due to my inability to keep things in stock. Right before this all happened, I had brought on 2 employees, and things were like looking up, and it was going to be awesome. Uh, they were able to produce software without my intervention, which was
Wow.
amazing.
Oh,
It's the
wow.
first time that had ever happened. It's honestly like a dream come true. I was working through like all the formulas I've created over the years for other product lines that I was going to introduce, and here we are.
Yeah.
So yeah, so they'll be back when it's allowed.
Wow. Employees that can help like unsupervised. That's just
Yeah, that's so
Oh my
rare.
God. Yeah. Uh, well, I mean, my business is really bifurcated into hardware and software, and it's really hard for me to do both in the same day or like get ramped up. Like, the more I get ramped up on one, the harder it is to switch to the other one
Yeah, I
because
get
they're
that.
completely different.
yeah.
So yeah, having employees that can handle just software production, that's been the dream. And it had just happened. We were on like week 3. One of them was keeping me accountable. Like every Monday, she was like, "Look, we're having a fucking planning meeting today. Every Monday, you're gonna set your goals. You're gonna give me goals, and we're gonna meet these goals." And I was like, "Oh my God, structure! Like, I haven't had any structure in 4.5 years."
It sounded like she's just what you need though.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Well, real quick, I always start the episodes with some icebreakers. These are just meant to be like just quick questions. So my first one I always ask everybody is ice cream, and I know you're an ice cream eater, so I think there for a while you were living off of ice cream, if I recall.
I would still be living off of it if I could get it more reliably.
Yeah, it's probably not as convenient right now.
No, because I'm probably never leaving the house again. So, yeah, I refresh shipped, Instacart, and Whole Foods delivery like I assume people refresh my brushes page.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
like 70 times a day, just like refreshing. I've got carts ready at all of them,
Like
just
looking
waiting
for
for a time
opening,
slot.
right?
Yeah, as soon as
Yeah.
I can grab a time slot, I grab it because they're like 6 days out anyway,
Oh, wow.
if I can get them,
That's
which I
crazy.
can't.
Okay, so ice cream, chocolate or vanilla?
There's so many other options.
No, those are the two options.
I mean, if we're going just regular vanilla chocolate, then vanilla. But if it's chocolate with other things, then chocolate.
See, That's my response as well. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Because
Thank you.
chocolate's just chocolate. At least vanilla is actually okay by itself. Chocolate's just
Yeah.
It's just chocolate.
Yeah,
Finished chocolate is the best.
if you can melt it just right, then it's kind of like a Wendy's Frosty, and that's okay. But in regular ice cream form, chocolate's not going to win.
I agree.
Okay. So I also know that you happen to be on keto and have been doing keto for quite some time. So what is the one food that you miss the most being on keto?
Tortillas.
Just tortillas? Not even like
What type
burritos,
of
but just tortillas?
Anything that... Oh, all right. Tortillas. Tortillas, yes, that's the answer. But anything, everything can go in a tortilla.
That's
like
true.
Tortillas are just the best food vessel for other food.
Are corn tortillas keto?
No,
Fuck, that sucks. Like, there's just no
Yeah.
tortilla options.
no, you can do egg whites and one of the various flours that I have that's not a carby flour.
Have you
and
tried that?
I have tried it. I took the battery out of my smoke alarm the last time I tried it because it automatically called the fire department.
Oh,
I had
man.
to call 911 and say, no, please don't come to my house. And then my 3 emergency contacts all called me and they were like, I just got a call that your house is on fire. Are you okay? I'm like, I'm just making tortillas.
Oh my gosh.
It's been 2 years since I had a tortilla. I just wanted to have one.
Sounds like you're a great cook.
I am. Thanks.
Okay, so if you could travel in time and meet anyone, who would it be?
I have a history degree. Why this
I
question?
know, that's why I asked.
God.
There's got to be someone.
It's really
Are
hard.
we assuming that we can communicate? Like
Yes,
there's
if
no
you
language
could go
barrier.
back in time and actually meet someone, talk, have a conversation, drill them for 100 questions like I'm doing
The
you,
thing
who would
is,
it be?
if you were to speak to someone like Adolf Hitler, I presume Hitler probably wouldn't understand him. So
That's what I'm at. So
Yeah.
we've got
Assume
like
there's no language barriers.
Okay, no
who would
language
one
barrier.
person that you want to meet?
God, that's difficult.
Because let's be real, if there's someone you wanted to meet enough, you'd learn the language, right?
I barely know English.
It's a hard one.
It is kind of hard.
Let's
fun.
just circle back. Let it marinate. And we'll come back to this one because this is not an easy question.
Okay, so I also know that you're a huge writer and reader, right? You do a lot of reading, and you're a fairly prolific writer from the conversations that we've had. Whether you share that with anyone, like physically the writing with anyone or not, you're fairly prolific at both. So if you had to pick, would you rather not be able to read or not be able to write?
Right. I like reading more than writing.
That's a good answer. I think I am as well. I hate writing. I'm not very good at it though. Okay.
Writing's fun,
The
but
thing is, not being able to read would be so frustrating.
Yes.
So
I don't want to lose access to other perspectives. That would be like if I could write but not read, then it would only be my perspective forever, and that sounds horrible to me.
it's deep, man.
That's true. Yeah, Scott's also into philosophy.
Yeah, it works.
Philosophy minor. It's really, really paying for itself.
Okay, would you rather not be able to ask any questions or never be able to answer any questions?
I can barely answer questions now, so shit,
When's your next brush drop?
I don't know.
There we go.
That's
Oh my
definitely
God.
a question
I have
he's not answering.
no idea. I don't answer it because I honestly never know.
Yeah.
The answer's always when I have them ready.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
did a tease Saturday, so there's probably like 500 people that's been sitting on his website hitting a refresh for like 48 hours now.
I told people not to. Like I turned one of those just to see if those blanks were going to be viable. I don't know when I'll be in the garage again. You know, like that's how it works. But I hadn't
All right,
posted
Peter,
anything.
You refresh for a week, it's fine.
I hadn't posted anything in a while, so
God.
it was pretty.
Damn, dude.
What's in that? Is that copper?
I don't remember what this particular leaf is. It's not gold leaf. It's like a rose variegated something. It was really pretty, and all of the subtlety was lost completely when it was cast. But regardless, these are pretty, and I have it just sitting here. This is the only one. There will be more eventually, but I don't know when that's going to be because I have to redo my whole kitchen. So
Okay, so answer the question.
I did it.
Okay, then let's circle back. Who would you like to meet?
Would I like to meet? Are we talking like definitely existed, potentially?
Oh my God, anybody in
it
history.
matters.
No language
The thing is,
barriers.
it does matter because the way I would think about this is imagine if you could prevent a catastrophe by speaking to that person. That's like, that's a big thing to be able to do.
The temporal prime directive is very against altering history.
Oh my God.
So, well, let's just say the Buddha.
Okay,
Buddha. Okay,
that's fair.
interesting. Interesting choice. Not really surprised now that I think about it, but that's a very interesting choice.
I don't think it's that surprising.
It's not. It's very Scott-like. Okay, so let's double back and go back to the beginning. And so, with how long have you been Declaration from? How long has it been since you rebranded from Declaration from L&L?
2.5 years.
Okay.
2.5
So-
years.
So in that time, obviously you have two sides of the business. You have like your hardware and your software. And is it fair to say hardware's your primary focus?
It's so mine personally, yes. By sales, it depends on how much software gets made, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm serious, because it goes
Yeah.
as I make it. The limiting factor is production, just like hardware. I mean, I'm the bottleneck to the whole business.
Right.
But
As artisans, we tend to get in our own way, right? Like we tend to be the bottleneck.
yeah, well, I don't have binders of shit. I just make stuff occasionally.
Hey now, my binders come in handy. Don't be making fun of them.
I believe you 100%. So the thing is, making hardware for me is like 4 things I have to keep track of. I don't have binders. Binders would come in handy for this.
Binders are coming in handy.
Yeah, there's like 4 things. Like I need resin, I need pigment, I need badger hair, 2 types of glue, and string. That's it. Whereas like making 1 batch of soap, depending on how many fragrance components there are, that's like 40 things that I have to. I have no idea how much of anything I have right ever. I just kind of look and I'm like, this seems low. I don't know. And then I wind up with like way too much of one ingredient. And then I am out of something absolutely crucial that I overlooked. And that happens all the time. And so software is a lot more stressful for me as far as keeping track of what I have. So, I wouldn't say that either one's my specific focus, but software is a lot more stressful, so I tend to avoid more stressful things just for survival purposes. And with the addition of employees, it's now something that I can hand off to somebody and let them deal with that. And then, like, if something runs out, then it's like, oh, that's fine. I don't know. It's different for me.
Yeah. I definitely can imagine that having two focuses. I mean, I had a men's and a women's, and even though they're similar focuses, they were totally different. And I literally just took all the women's stuff off of my website, and it's 100% men's as of this past weekend. And
Congratulations.
I know, even that feels like a stress reliever. I'm like, I went from making 70 products to like 30.
Right? It feels, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I want to
nice.
make more products. I just don't have the time and really the mental energy of late to do
Yeah.
so.
So let's switch focus just a little bit. So that is something that, you know, we want to talk about. So I know personally from speaking with you, I think we met, it was right about a year ago. And right away I felt very comfortable like talking to you. And so we've talked several times. And so I know some of your personal history, and I know there are some people who do, but I don't think it's something that you've really shared publicly. And you know, you have been. This is going to switch gears a little bit from our normal like podcast, probably like groove, and we're going to kind of go into a little bit more of a serious subject, and it's something that is very close to you, correct? Very personal for you, I
Yeah.
guess I should say. So, what are some of the struggles that you have had, like pulling in and getting like pulling in and getting like production and things like that? Like, what are some of the topics that affect basically your production in the long run as far as business wise goes? Obviously, we all have personal things, but business wise, let's look at it business wise. What are some of the things that you've dealt with personally that have really had a major impact on like your production, and like even interactions with like
Well,
customers?
interactions are hard. Production's easier than interacting for me. So just a quick rundown of me personally. I've got really severe anxiety, and there are a lot of different labels you can put on my anxiety. Like, I'm an actual legitimate agoraphobe, like we do exist. I have pretty severe panic disorder. For those of you that don't know about panic disorder, it's when your brain can and will go into full fight or flight for no particular reason. It's like things are just kind of broken, and at any point, for any or no reason, the switch will just get flipped, and you're suddenly in what feels very truly feels like an absolute life or death situation. Like, if you think about what you would feel if you were like rock climbing and like free climbing and missed a hold or something, and suddenly you're only able to hold on with like one hand, and you're like, holy shit, I'm about to die. It's that, but it can happen at any time for no reason. At
That sounds
the
exhausting.
Oh, it is. It sucks. The At its peak for me, I was averaging 3 to 5 per day. Just, I mean, at any time, for any or no reason. Like, I never lost a job to it or anything, never got in a car accident, but it would happen all the time while driving, which is extremely dangerous.
A little bit.
But there's nothing, I mean, there's nothing you can do. You can't stop driving. We all got bills to pay. Which, honestly, a lot of this is why Declaration exists now in the first place, was commuting in Atlanta sucked so bad. I was spending between 3 and 4 hours in the car every day. I was driving
Wow.
round trip 44 miles, and it was 3 to 4
Shit.
hours every day. Yeah, yeah, it sucked.
Wow.
Uh, and like I could not handle it anymore. I don't do well with being trapped. It's not claustrophobia, but it's being or feeling trapped. And in traffic, you're trapped. Like
Mhm.
you, same thing with like airplanes. You can't get off an airplane. I don't handle those well. Uh, but yeah, Declaration Grooming grew out of a need to get away from that, which made my agoraphobia much worse for a really long time, which was better for production, honestly. But uh, yeah, also had severe depression issues since I was 11. We'll go with 11. And those persist to the present.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, being awake is really exhausting.
Yeah, I can imagine because we've all had things that have like scared us, or like if somebody even sneaks up on you, and even though it's not as drastic as like your true flight or fight kicking in, just that short like adrenaline burst,
Hmm.
I can only imagine having that happen several times a day for an extended period
Yeah,
because
for no reason.
when your true fight or flight kicks in, your adrenals kick in majorly, and
Yeah.
then you're left with this adrenal crash. And so then you go from this peak high anxiety, heart racing, blood pressure, and all this to this like crash. So to do those like severe swings several times a day, I can't even imagine how exhausting that is.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. You kind of get used to it, um, to some extent. I mean, just about anything can be normalized. I mean, we're very adaptive as a species, but I wouldn't choose it.
Right.
Uh, and the thing that sucks about panic disorder specifically is it becomes a negative feedback loop. So, like, if I the really the treatment modality other than medication for panic disorder is to just try and extend the amount of time between panic attacks, because the more you have close together, the more you're going to have, because they happen for no reason. Some people
Right.
have just specific triggers that they can work with. I do have some specific triggers, but for the most part, it just happens. And the goal is just to increase the amount of time between them so that there's fewer overall. Because like if you panic, you're like, oh shit, it's happening again. I hope it doesn't happen again. I really hope it. Like I don't want to panic. I don't. And you become obsessed with it, and then
Right.
you panic again, and that just happens until you can kind of break the cycle for a little bit. And it'll eventually come back. And yeah.
That definitely sounds incredibly exhausting. And I know that with a lot of people, anxiety and depression kind of typically go hand in hand. That's not necessarily uncommon. With the agoraphobia, though, how long did that last? I mean, I know now that you
Oh, it's
still
fully back
aren't.
now. I'll tell you that. So agoraphobia is the the only treatment that works for me is exposure therapy, which is intentionally forcing myself into situations that make me uncomfortable and doing it consistently. And by consistently, I mean I can never stop. The way I generally explain most of my anxiety issues to people. I think it's the most apt simile that I have for it. Is it's like running on a treadmill that I can't control the speed, and it's just a treadmill. I can't hold on, can't control the speed. I just have to run, and it's always running, and that running being symbolic of forcing myself out into public, and for whatever reason, and I if I stop running, or if I like trip, which a trip or a stumble would be like if I go in public and have a panic attack. Because having panic attacks, I've had them for so long that were I to have one right this second, you wouldn't know it. I can internalize it enough, because I mean I had real jobs before I quit real life, and had to like run a lot of meetings and talk to a lot of like run meetings pitching things to executives and shit, and you can't just be like, sorry guys, I'm having a panic attack, I gotta go out and walk around and drink some water, I'll be back in 15 minutes and we'll pick right up.
I gotta cut this short. Hold on.
Right, there's none of that you can do. So for me, so back to the treadmill. So like if I stumble, sometimes you can recover. Like if you're running on a treadmill, you're not holding on to anything. Like if you stumble, you have a panic attack. Sometimes it's just like and you catch yourself and you're okay. Sometimes you get thrown right off the damn treadmill. And when that happens, the treadmill doesn't stop. You just stop, and things get worse and worse and worse and worse, and you have to eventually force yourself back onto the treadmill, but you can't stop it to slowly work up to it. It's just like you have to jump on running and hope that you can do it. And if you can't, you just get thrown off the treadmill again, and it hurts every time. And it gets scarier trying to do it. So, yeah, this lockdown thing, I've got a lot of really weird mixed feelings just because of my particular pathology. It's in some sense interesting having the government mandate my the results of my mental health issues. Like, hey, you can't go anywhere. It's like, okay. Like
You've been prepping for this, right?
Yeah, oh, I've lived this life for years. It's like, okay, but at the same time, it took away my only treatment for my issues, and much like running on a treadmill, it's something I have to do. I have to do it like every day. Like if I go 3 days without leaving, it gets harder and harder. Like exponentially harder, and I'm at like week 7 now. So I've got, and I say this is not an exaggeration. Once there's an actual vaccine, like, and I'm talking like legit vaccine, I'll feel more comfortable leaving, but I've probably got about a year of work after that to get back to where I was 7 weeks ago, which was a result of 2 years of effort. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's very significant as far as like a setback. So are you leaving to like go for a walk or anything at all? No.
Nope.
Yeah.
I've been to the back of my backyard, and that's the furthest I've been.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely very significant, because I know from speaking with you, you definitely didn't leave your house at all for an extended period of time, correct?
Yeah. There was at what I would consider the peak of my agoraphobia, I want to say 1,200 miles on my car in 2 years. And that was the extent of my leaving. And that was literally just me driving to the post office, which was less than a mile from my house. And yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely a lot to. I know that you have found things that work for you, and I know for you, forcing yourself to leave and to even put yourself into any sort of social situation is incredibly hard, but also therapeutic at the same time.
Right.
So I can't imagine that. Yeah, that's terrible to have made such progress and then to feel like you're kind of back at square one where you were.
Well, yeah, but like I don't want any pity for it or anything because like right now, aside from the fact that my panic attacks have increased like really significantly in the past week or so for no reason, it just happens. Uh, like I'm comfortable in this, and like this, I've done this for so long that this honestly feels like my natural state, and the exposure therapy of forcing myself out and forcing myself to for lack of a better term, emulate what regular people do with no effort or like a crazy extrovert like you has to do like go out and be around people and do things in so many ways that it feels like it's a constant fight with myself like against this version of me being the one that doesn't leave and can survive like this for a really long time. So I don't know. I've had a lot of time to think about it, as I'm sure you can imagine. I've had 7 weeks to
Yeah.
like feel all of the regression, and in a lot of ways, it's much more comfortable than I would like it to be. But society doesn't really allow this sort of existence. It's frowned upon. So when there's a vaccine and I can start forcing myself back out, I will figure out how to do that then. But I'll be in lockdown for probably quite a good while longer than the government recommends.
Yeah, I feel like though, I mean, definitely it's a different situation, but myself being an extrovert, it is hard to force my, I mean, it's just my husband and I, and so like I'm not even seeing like my kids really. So
Yeah,
it is. I always say I feel sorry for the people who are stuck at home with their little kids right now. It makes me happy that my kids are adults, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I kind of wish they were stuck here with me to some degree. um, yeah, it's definitely hard. So and I can't relate to that at all because the thought of never leaving my house or never really socializing, because you're right, I am definitely an extrovert, as most of us know. That is to me completely terrifying. So I can't really relate to that at all. But as far as like the anxiety and depression, I have dealt with personally, I've dealt with like postpartum depression, and it's
yeah,
definitely a different onset because it's almost immediate, um, just because it's kind of hormonal triggered. But it caused so many problems, like looking back, that I didn't even realize at the time it was affecting, down to relationships, personal, obviously everything. And probably about a good 6 months or a year after I was like coming out of it, only then did I realize how much it affected, and that I even was having postpartum depression. I really
yeah.
just didn't even recognize it at the time. It's definitely an incredible feeling to be tossed into something like that immediately. So it's definitely a different situation, but I don't know that the circumstances, while they're different, like the treatment and the feelings that you go through, there's such a broad range of it. It's incredibly hard to deal with. Jack, have you ever had any issues with? I know most people. I mean, it's pretty normal at some point in your life to go through some sort of anxiety or depression, um, whether it's situational or more lifelong.
Yeah. Um, Probably starting from about the age of 12. I've always had triggers of pretty bad anxiety. Um, and now, ever since moving here, I have increased social anxiety, and that kind of bred out of people not understanding what I'm saying. Um, it made me just reluctant to want to talk to people, frankly, and it still affects me now. It's difficult because really the only way of coping with it is by doing, but doing is by far the hardest thing to do in terms of treatment for it. Um,
That's exposure therapy,
yeah,
man. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's effective, but it's hard.
yeah. I mean, it's the social anxiety is fairly new. Although, quite frankly, I've always been, that nerdy guy that would rather sit in and play video games as opposed to someone who's, going out all the time. I've gone through different phases of my life where going out has been easier, but quite frankly, it's always been easier for me to stay indoors and be by myself. Um, the strange contrast between that is I struggle to not. If I feel lonely, I start to feel worse. But quite frankly, the only way I feel happy is through being in my own company a lot of the time. It's almost like a downward spiral.
Hmm.
Where I'm comfortable, I'm also not comfortable. So in theory, I'm actually not very comfortable. Uh, yeah, and ever since coming here, I have no friends in the flesh here, so there's no excuse for me to leave my house ever. And I just, I hardly ever leave, frankly.
Do
Oh,
you find that doing your videos help with
Oh
that?
yeah, honestly that's the main reason I started them. Having something to focus on really, really helped me when I first came here. Um, although at first it seemed like something that was quite novel to me, it became quite an important way for me to, although I'm not directly interacting with people, just seeing those comments below and being able to
Mm-hmm.
interact with people that way was a way of me not feeling as lonely. Um, it's such a strange situation, honestly it is, but I mean, it's all pretty difficult for even me to understand.
Yeah. And you're not, everybody I think probably knows I'm an extrovert at this point. So socializing, I'm an external processor. And someone just pointed that out. Actually, JR just pointed that out to me recently. And it totally made sense when he said that. And I was like, holy fuck, I'm 45 years old. And that's the first time it's actually like, I know I'm like an extrovert, but being an external processor, like, just never dawned on me. And that's one, sometimes I just need to like bounce things off of people. So for me, talking to people and putting myself out there, sometimes it's not necessarily easy, but it's easier for me to do that than it is to like sit in my own head sometimes. But you and Scott both have that in common because Scott's not necessarily, well, he's not an extrovert at all, but
no.
he is comfortable doing lives and doing, social media and stuff like that and doing,
Well,
I will, okay, it's not social media, but like when I asked you to do a live with me on Instagram, you're like, okay, yeah, and you weren't nervous about it at all.
I
So,
was I was in a that was at like the peak of me of years of effort to um, get out of a lot of this shit that I live in.
yeah.
When we did that, uh,
But would you
it
say it's easier for you to do something like that than it is to like go and meet someone in person?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think you two have that in common to where you're not as uncomfortable. It may make you uncomfortable, but you're not as uncomfortable doing something like on a video or etc.
Well, there's a
versus
big,
meeting someone in
from
person and
my
talking.
perspective, the it's either that or don't do it at all. Um, so I mean, the idea of being on video and speaking to people is quite honestly the only way I talk to people most of the time. So if I don't do that, I have no other interaction with people. Um, I'm fortunate to be living with someone, but honestly, if I was on my own, I just I would never really talk to anyone.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
I so shortly after I moved to Michigan, so I haven't moved internationally, but I moved like 2.5 years ago, from Georgia to Michigan, and didn't really know anybody, and very shortly thereafter got divorced, and so I hadn't planned to live alone where I knew nobody. Speaking to your loneliness feeling, for me, being an agoraphobe in Georgia, I never felt lonely because I grew up there. I knew people, and there was always the option. Like, it was always my choice to be alone.
Exactly.
Right.
Versus living in Michigan, that was no longer my choice. It's just, you are alone here.
Yeah.
And that, in a lot of ways, was good for me because it forced me to have to figure out how to meet people and how to. Oh, I have a cat vomiting. Okay, don't do it. Go, get to tile.
Get to tile.
Not to the other rug. Okay. Well, I live with animals, so that's my life. That's my cat that has 4 teeth. Brisket's taking care of it. This is the life I lead.
Oh, gross.
I don't have to, she's happy to do it. It's
Nice.
Yeah, it's a self-sustaining ecosystem. So having the option versus not having the option, that's what changed things for me personally. I'm sure you can relate to that.
Yeah.
Like, that's where my personal loneliness came from, which was something I'd never experienced. Like, being an agoraphobe in Georgia, like, didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because if I wanted to, I could talk to somebody and go do something. Basically never did.
Yeah.
But
well, you had friends and family there, right?
Right. It was after I stopped drinking that I became an agoraphobe. Like, alcohol's apparently, what I learned when I quit drinking is that alcohol's what made me not an agoraphobe. Then I quit drinking, and it's like, oh, I don't want to leave anymore.
Yeah, and that's common because a lot of people self-medicate. I mean, essentially that's what it is self-medication, whether it is drinking, alcohol. And don't get me wrong, because I mean, I've sat here and chugged a glass of wine the whole time we've been talking, but self-medicating is definitely an issue for a lot of people, and sometimes they don't realize that's what they're doing, basically.
Oh, yeah. Well,
So
alcohol's so not only socially acceptable, but expected. Like, I've gone
yeah.
on first dates that have ended within 10 minutes of me saying I don't drink.
Oh.
Like, for real, of just like a first date, like, talking whatever. It's like, hey, what would you like to drink? Like, soda and lime, please. And it's like, you don't drink? It's like, I don't drink. It's like, oh. Drink comes, and it's like, okay, I'm really tired. I gotta go now. Like, just have them nope out like 10 minutes in. It's like, okay, cool.
Wow.
Give up a free DD. That's fine.
Yeah.
Awesome.
My husband doesn't drink either, but he did like enough drinking for many years to where but now he has the same, obviously he's not going on dates, but
Right.
it's the same thing. We go out and sometimes people are like, hey, what do you want to drink? And he'll say, I don't want anything, thank you. But then they're like, well, no, I got it, or it's on me, and he's like, no, thank you. And finally he's like, I don't drink, and they're like, are you sure you don't just want one? And he's like, I can't have just one. That's why I don't drink. No. So it's definitely, obviously I enjoy beverages. But I see his side and I see his struggle with it. So, and people they don't accept that he doesn't drink. People always want to push, right?
Yeah. It's crazy, really. Well, not really, if you think of the billions spent on advertising and marketing alcohol.
Yeah.
The ubiquity of alcohol. I mean, it's everywhere, and so many activities are built around it. So many social activities are literally just built around drinking. That, I mean, for me, it's not like I'm morally opposed to drinking. It's more of I got medication that actually helps reduce my panic attacks, and if I drink with my medications, like, I could just go into a coma.
Yeah.
And no, not really looking for that. So if it's like, hey, you can drink and be socially accepted and then be hungover for 3 days from 2 beverages because you drank too much when you were young and now you're not. Or take your pills that make you not panic and then you're not hungover. I'm just going to take the pills.
Yeah. Alcohol is like food, and I definitely had a food issue. I mean, I used to be extremely overweight, and it was definitely just as hard for me to deal with like a food, basically a food addiction, as it is to deal with something like an alcohol addiction, to where except for you need food to still eat, like survive. Like you can't just stop food and move away from it.
That's the hardest part of food as an addiction is you can't. It's like if you're addicted to heroin, but it's like, hey, you have to have some heroin every day, but just a little bit.
Right.
It's just this much. That's the amount you get.
You have to know your limits. Yeah, and I would definitely say that any kind of like depression type issue that I had, food was definitely my coping mechanism at the time. And as a result, I was incredibly obese. I mean, at one point I weighed 300 pounds. So it was definitely, an issue.
So, on that note, why don't we segue to healthier coping mechanisms than heroin or food?
Yeah, exactly. So I know that you have found like what works for you. So what was your journey in finding those? Because I imagine it takes time, right?
Well, okay. So I'm not an only child, but I grew up essentially an only child. So I've spent a significant fraction of my life alone, like a very significant amount. And I don't know, self entertainment or self stimulation is just, I don't know really another way to be. For me though, and I'm not bipolar, but I develop obsessions is probably not the correct term, but we're going to go with it in the colloquial sense of the term, where something will grab my attention, and to be really clear here, I mean like learning a new skill or picking up a new hobby or something. That's why I turn. I bought a lathe on a whim one day, and started turning. I was building guitars before that, but then switched jobs. That's what led to the really long commute. It was taking forever to finish a guitar. I was getting like no hey, I completed a thing, satisfaction, none whatsoever. So I bought a lathe because I could finish projects more quickly and get like some gratification that I was making something or completing a task. And that's what led here somehow. But like right now, my current obsession is my house. I'm in the middle of like a faux renovation of my kitchen right now. Both my spare bedrooms that were just nothing are now like functional spaces that I'm continuing to work on as I identify more things that I can do. But right now it's the kitchen, and because I mean, for right now, and I think this is really applicable to a lot of people that are uh, taking the government's advice and staying home. This space here, my house is, for all intents and purposes, right now, this is my entire world, and it's completely within my control, which is where agoraphobia for me comes from in the first place. As soon as I go outside, the world's chaotic. Anything can happen, and it's just generally scary. In here, things are pretty controlled. Occasionally, cats vomit, but as far as things going really wrong, it's much less likely to happen here than somewhere else. Uh, so right now, I'm just working on the space and making it into something that I like more. It's taking up a lot of my time and attention, which I personally need, because it's when I don't have a focus that really grabs my attention, and I would love to be able to just decide what my focus is going to be. Like right now, I would really love to just decide that my focus is going to be making brush handles or it's going to be making soap. That would be amazing, but I'm not in that headspace right now. It's right now it's my kitchen, and it'll be interesting to see how badly I can fuck it up by the end of this week. Uh, but that's I I always try and tell people, like, use motivation when you have it. If something grabs your attention like that, don't wait to don't make excuses. Just do whatever the hell it is. Because motivation, once gone, doesn't always come back. For me,
Yeah.
it never comes back. Like if I don't do something immediately, I'm not gonna do it. And if it's something that's like really grabbed my attention and I let it pass, that's giving up like weeks of minimal anxiety, which is like, that's just such a mistake for me personally. So right now it's my kitchen, and I don't know what it's going to be after that.
So in the past, so right now, obviously, you're in a little bit of a different situation because you were into this like forced isolation, basically, right? In the past, what are some things that you've used or learned has worked for you as far as coping, whether it's with the anxiety when you're out, like, or situational anxiety. I know one of the things that definitely the yearly event that makes you uncomfortable is like the Maggard's meat. Um, what?
I'm okay with that, surprisingly enough, because it's not. I've worked retail long enough that I've got my retail
Yeah.
persona, and the retail persona is not me. It's not me. It's somebody that looks like me but is a representation of something that's not me. Granted, with the brand being me, essentially. it's a lot harder to separate it, but it's surprisingly not that bad. The only reason those meetups are so hard for me is because I procrastinate every bit of work I have to do until like 4 days before it. I'm like, oh fuck, I don't get to sleep for 4 days. Like last year, I was on something like 20 hours of sleep in 8 days. Yeah, I was literally falling asleep standing up.
Wow.
Yeah, but I did it, and immediately following it, had to go home and take a nap, and then went back. But yeah.
So those days aren't like draining or like
Of
I
course
feel
they're
like they're like
draining.
over. I mean, well, they're physically draining for anybody. And I'm an extrovert, and still, after you talk to hundreds of people over the day, even I eventually get talked out. But are they like are they very overwhelming for you, even if you don't maybe get anxiety like leading up to it? Is it like I imagine like there's so many people, and I know you've developed this like
That
this personal persona of like don't get too close, don't think that you're gonna like touch me or hug me or anything like that, and like stay
I'm
away.
not as bad as Vita. I mean, I love Vita, by the way. That's not a dig.
Yeah, no,
Just
she's awesome, but
do
she's like,
not
don't hug
hug
me.
Vita.
Even me, like I was like, I'm so excited I get to physically meet you at Maggard's, and she's like,
She's
I'm
like,
just
don't
gonna
hug
tell
me.
you, I don't hug.
Uh, no, like prior to fear of death by virus, handshakes, that was fine. I I struggle with giving up my time unexpectedly. It's the same. It's whether it be customers or personal relationships. It doesn't matter. I to go back to my obsessions or whatever you want to call them. Those are really just things that grab my attention, and I throw my attention at them at the same time. Like I throw myself into them because if I'm focused on something that's not depression or anxiety, I don't feel much depression or anxiety.
Yeah.
If in the absence of those, because I definitely go through periods where there's nothing that's really grabbing my attention. I'm not really engaged with anything. Those are the worst times. Those are the worst times for depression, anxiety, all of my pathologies. Just that's the absolute worst. So I try not to squander any second of that, and um, any requests or demands or intrusions or whatever into my time when I'm really focused is like it takes that away from me. Like it takes away that coping mechanism for me, which is why I'm as bad as I am at responding to literally anybody about anything. Um, I'm to the point now where like if I can go back like a week and get through a week's worth of emails at one time, like I'm doing great, and I'm not even there right now. Um, but it's because it's a survival mechanism, honestly. It's just like, how am I going to get through this? Gonna focus on the damn kitchen. Gonna be like 80 videos deep down YouTube rabbit holes figuring out like how to do what I want to do. And like if somebody calls or an email comes in, it's just like I can't do that right now.
Yeah.
And then I don't get back to it.
Yeah.
And
It's
yeah.
like a hyper focus, not necessarily like an obsession, right?
Yeah,
Like you're
it's
just like
just
hyper focused on things.
yes. And out of necessity. Like it
Yeah.
really is required for me to do so. And anything that intrudes on that hyper focusedness is hard for me to deal with.
So whenever it comes to dealing with like how hard is it for you? This may sound like a silly question. How hard is it for you to prioritize things in general, whether it's business or personal, when you're hyper focused onto doing one task, so to speak? I imagine that affects both sides. And like that's why I was making the comment when you said that you have, the assistant who's coming in and she's like, we're gonna meet goals and we're gonna get this shit done. Like I feel like that's probably very good for you, right?
Yeah, so in real life, I was a project manager. Like that's what I did, and I was good at it, but I wasn't the one that had to do the work. Like all of my,
Right.
I'm really good at prioritizing work for other people and figuring out how other people need to spend their time to be most effective. But when I'm the one that has to do the work, I'm like, not feeling it today. I'm gonna. And I don't know if you're familiar with the comedian Patton Oswalt, who's one of my personal favorites. Uh, it seems like every one of his specials, he starts off by talking about how he needs to lose weight, and he's done this for, I mean, like 15 years. He starts off like, I gotta lose weight, and in one of his specials, he starts off by saying, so I got this like treadmill at home. Okay, so because I was like, I'm not going to the gym, I'm not going to go out and run, so I'll get a thing for home. And so he has this treadmill at home, and he says, the problem with this that I did not think about is everything I like is at home, is in my home. And so now this treadmill has to compete with everything that I like more than this fucking treadmill. And I feel that like every day because I don't have to leave here for any part of my business at all, ever.
Yeah.
And so lately, since lockdown, my ability to prioritize my time towards business in literally any way has been absolutely horrific. Because I've had to hyper focus on other shit, so just so that I can stay sane. Uh, I'm hoping that soon some inspiration, motivation is going to come back. Also, to be really fair here, I've been at a fucking quarter of tank of propane since lockdown started, and like it snowed 5 times last week. Like, what the fuck is that about? Like, I can't work in the garage if it's snowing outside, and I can't heat it. So that's that's a very legitimate reason for me to have not turned handles, and I'm almost caught up on nodding services. Like I don't have anything older than a month for the first time in like a year, and it's amazing. Uh, but I don't really feel like making soap, so I'm not making soap right now. That started as a, well, I got to get through at least 2 weeks to make sure I'm not infected. Like Southeast Michigan, Detroit specifically, is like per capita, like just been ravaged by this novel coronavirus. And so I was like, well, I don't want to make anything right now that could potentially infect somebody like unknowingly. Like if I'm asymptomatic, I'm not making something and sending it out that like I don't want to deal with that moral burden. And now, I mean, I've gotten not gotten, I've started off and have continued being ridiculous with every package I receive. Like it's going to sit outside for 2 days, and then I go outside and I spray it down with 80% ethanol in gloves. I opened everything outside that I possibly can and just leave all exterior packaging outside. It's a whole thing. Uh, but even doing that, I'm still like I feel kind of leery about it, which I shouldn't, because but I do, and so I'm not making soap right now, and that's I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon because my fucking mail lady, at least she started wearing a mask finally, but nobody that delivers my groceries when I can occasionally get a slot for grocery delivery, nobody's wearing a mask or gloves, and I'm like, motherfuckers, like. St-
You don't want to be Typhoid Mary, it sounds like.
I don't like. That's again like the moral burden of that is something that I can't deal with. Even if I never knew about it, I would be aware of the possibility of it having happened. Like if, you know, customers of mine that had happened to purchase something suddenly got sick, like how I wouldn't, even though the entire world is essentially an infection vector right now, I
Yes.
wouldn't be able to sleep at night wondering. And
Yes.
I can't get an at-home antibody test. So, yeah,
That's true. You'll be Corona Scott.
I don't want that. Yeah, that's exactly precisely what I don't want. So,
It is really hard. So whenever you are, other than just like getting this hyper focus, what do you find? Like, do you have any other coping mechanisms with that? I know for me, like, and I've talked with you about this before. I do have some anxiety, but mine is very situational. So the one thing in business that really stresses me out is whenever I have a new release. When I have a new scent release, I get stressed and I always get
it's
massive
so rough.
anxiety.
Oh my God.
But whenever I released the Sago base, very few people realized how stressed and how
I
much
realized how stressed you were. We
anxiety.
talked
Yeah,
about it every damn day.
we did. Like, Scott was my one person that I was just like, oh my God, I'm gonna have like a complete meltdown because I get very situational anxiety and I call it I have product perfection disorder is what I call it. So um I just always, no matter how much I test something and how good I know it is or how good people say it is, when I'm getting ready to release an entirely new product to the masses, I have this overwhelming anxiety. And I'm like, is it good? Are people going to be let down? And I know everybody has that to some degree, but I get stuck in this loop of, they expect more, they want better. What if I can do better? What if I could have done two more test batches and it was twice as good? Like it's ridiculous, but I can't help myself and I get stuck into this loop of this situation that is very completely overwhelming. And there were like 3 days I couldn't hardly get out of bed. I was just like, my body was completely exhausted and overwhelmed, and I just was almost like completely non-functioning. And that's definitely inside like scoop there, guys, because
Yeah.
very few people know that. Like
I rem-
I had just this over, yeah, you were one of the few people that I talked to about it, and it's like I had no coping mechanism for that. I really just yeah.
The best bomb.
The best bomb, yes. um
I still like mine more, but mine smells really meaty. So,
that's actually very good because Scott doesn't self plug, guys. So that's actually very good.
this
Uh,
is seriously all I use on my tattoos right here.
nice.
Yep.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you like it. I'm
I mean,
glad it's
it's
subpar compared to yours, but I'm glad you like it. Like, so do you have? I feel like for you, releasing new products, like you deal with it much easier than I do, but for
oh
me, it's
no.
completely overwhelming.
Well, we deal with it very differently. See, I'm gonna just hit you with opinions here. Feel free to contradict me. With you and your PPD, uh, your that that worrying about uh, can I make it better? Can I make it better? There's no risk. Like you don't have to take the risk of actually releasing it. You get to just keep satisfying the feeling that you're doing work and you're doing something. but you're basically just spinning your wheels. You're not having to take the the leap off the cliff and do the actual release. I'm the absolute opposite, where I want shit released immediately so I can jump off the cliff and see what the hell happens, but not live in that what if space. That's a very nebulous place that I don't inhabit that space well.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
we talked about that actually because your milk steak release, like I obviously have been working on the Sago base forever. We had this conversation before because when I made the comment how many test batches, Scott was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
Verbatim quote.
Yes, literally. He instantly messaged me and it was like, "Dude, girl."
Release something. Just release
Girl,
anything at this point.
with you. So Scott definitely took a very different approach to that and was like, milk steak, done. Thank you. You guys are welcome. Like,
It's because I have to avoid that space that you get stuck in. I can't be in that space for long because it does to me what it does to you, where like I shut down, and become just crippled with what ifs, and I can't do that. And scents are something that, like, I've got to. Once my employees are back, they'll release whenever the hell that's gonna be, and whenever I order stuff for them. But they're done. But I don't send out like testers of scents. I don't want feedback. I don't want it.
good for you. Seriously, good for you.
I have to, because if I do, then it's like, okay, these 8 different people have 8 different opinions. Let me try and
Yes.
figure out how to incorporate these opinions, or like, who do I trust more here? And it's like, I say this every time I talk about my business. I make products for me. Like, I make what I want. I make what I want to use, what I want to smell, what I want to feel. That's what I make. And then I just hope that other people are like, oh, I like this. That's
Hope they're on board as much, right?
yeah, that's the goal. And having employees is interesting, at least because it brings different noses, and I could be like, hey, what does this is this offensive to you? And if they're like, no, this is not offensive, and I'm like, cool, I've achieved what I set out to achieve.
My husband can't smell.
That's
Like, it's
not
so hard.
awesome.
No, it's not, because his scent is not, his smell is like, it's not completely gone, but really, like, I can put on 3 different things and be like, smell this, and he's like, I don't know. I have no idea. Like, I really don't know. And I have 2 boys, you know, of course they don't live here anymore, but whenever I first started, they lived at home still. They were younger, and one of them can't smell. And so I'd be like, I only had one person I could go to and be like, smell this.
Right.
And eventually he's like, I can't smell anymore. I don't know. I can't help you. Yeah, that's awesome. Jack, do you have anything where you feel like, I know you're in a little bit of a different situation, but do you have those moments of things that like you, or like before releasing a video or a review, do you have anything where you feel like you just get a little bit
I work
overwhelmed?
for Carve, so whenever we release something new, I'm just waiting for people to moan at me that we don't have enough. And
I feel that in my soul. God.
I want to shove my fist through that computer screen because it's like, I have no control of this.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with me. But because I
Yeah.
fend all of this, it's like they're reaching through the screen and shaking me because they're not happy. I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. It is what it is. And I don't know. Before I end up getting angry, that really annoys me. But there's nothing I can do.
Well, like you said, not being out of your control. I mean, somewhat it's out of our control as well, but I guess a little bit definitely more in our control than in your circumstance where
Yeah,
you're
we're the
you're on
ones
the
making the
business.
shit, so it's a little different.
The
It's a little
the
bit
thing that annoys
different,
me
but
more than anything with the releases are, so the aluminum is an example I'll give you, right? Why don't you just send off a batch of 200? Well, we're 5 grand down the hole already. So a batch of 200 might be in another 5 grand down the hole. And you don't see that, but we have to deal with the brunt of that.
yeah,
So no, you're not going to get a batch
exactly.
of fucking 200. You be patient. I'm going to get
That's
mad. I'm going to get annoyed.
no, I I mean I feel that too, and I know you do too, Heather. It's like we have to front the money for all this shit.
Right.
It's not
Exactly.
like we get paid up front. I kind of do, and for nodding services. Sorry, everybody that has to wait on nodding services. I'm, s- I'm
That's
sorry.
a custom service though. That's a little bit different.
Eh, still, uh, still, sorry, everybody. Uh, but that being said, it's like we gotta front the money for this shit and hope it generates the return that we hope it generates.
Yeah.
And like for me, this is the only money that comes in here. Uh, if shit doesn't work or people stop buying from me, then I'm literally homeless.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yes.
that it's a very short jaunt from sitting here to like I'm in foreclosure now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I
Uh,
think that's what it was with me with the tallow is because it was a brand new product. It's not like I already had a tallow and I was just trying to update my base and I shouldn't say just because that can be a big deal sometimes. But it wasn't just a minor change. It was like a whole new thing and people had been waiting. Like
yeah.
I launched in October and literally by January, people were like, "Where's your tallow? Are you doing a tallow?" And so from January until October when I released it, literally this whole time, people are like, "Where's your tallow? Where's your tallow? Where's your tallow?" And I think I started testing like April, early May, something like that. So I had been working on it for months, and all I could think of is people are going to they have all this high expectation. What if I fail? What if it's not good? And then immediately around the same time, like all of these amazing bases, milk steak, um, started coming out. So it was like even more
Yeah.
like just the weight was like all of a sudden like holy fuck, I can't breathe. Like, what if it's not like, how am I going to stand up to all of these new bases? I'm going to be the new kid on the block here. Like, it was incredibly overwhelming. And I think maybe because of the newer bases, like, I feel like a lot of us came out all around within like just a few weeks of each
Yeah.
other. And I think had maybe that not happened, it maybe wouldn't have had such a
How
mental
many were
overwhelming
there? It was
feel.
3, right? It was you, Declaration, and Holy Cow.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe
Will was
Excelsior.
well before
that was
everyone,
earlier
wasn't
in
he?
the year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
he was earlier in the year. I can't remember if Grooming Department came out around then as well
maybe,
with the new one,
maybe.
but
He has a new base
yeah,
today than
yeah.
he did yesterday and the day before.
Yeah, so there were definitely like it was just timing, right? So, but it still affected me like exponentially more and it was very overwhelming. And for me to deal with things, I get hyper focused, but I'm not obsessive and I'm not technically OCD, but I'm very type A personality and I get into this like loop of that routine. And that's like, you heard Scott make fun of me because of binders. So I do like organization is a big thing for me. And if things are organized and they're clean,
Right.
like
But see,
it's,
but that's busy work. There's no risk in that.
no, but you can control it. It's like it's within
Right.
control. And so it calms
Sometimes you
me,
gotta you gotta jump in the fucking pool whether or not you can
Yeah.
swim and figure it out.
Yeah. It's funny because sometimes I can do the risk things. Like whenever I wanted to start the black line and the black label line, and I did the number one, I was like, okay, it's going to be a $35 soap. I'm going to do this. It's going to be a rose scent, y'all. Like I was okay with all these risks. And it was, I had or $5,000 sunk into this line that I'm like, it's a $35 soap and it's a rose scent. Like, this is really a pretty good risk. But for some reason, it was nothing compared to doing the tallow release, where it was like I just felt all this pressure to get it perfect the first time.
My big issue is more around criticism. It starts off at first I can be okay. Like, it's like, okay, I kind of see your point. But then I find a lot of people have the tendency to take it way too far and talk out of place when they have no idea what's going on. And people might get mad at me for saying that, but fuck you. I'm of the opinion that if you really don't know what's going on, just ask. If you have a problem with the way the operation of the business is, just talk to me, please, instead of making ludicrous statements, because those ludicrous statements don't really help you solve the problems you might have. I've always liked to think that I'm a fairly reasonable person, and if I talk to someone, I can generally see their point of view, and we can come to some agreement if they feel they've been treated badly. But man, the assumptions and then the absolute fucking barrage of criticism, honestly, it makes me incredibly anxious. I start seeing it coming in, and I'm like, if I keep looking at this, I'm gonna have a terrible rest of my day, because it's gonna make me shut down. I have to step away for an hour and come back and then start to deal with it like an adult. But honestly, it can really suck.
Yeah. Scott's amazing at criticism, by the way. Like, so
I don't see it.
Scott doesn't read reviews.
No, I don't read.
That's awesome.
No, I can't. I like making products for me, which means keeping my brain unpolluted. Not whatever. If anybody's offended by that, I'm sorry. But yeah, no, I don't read reviews. I don't read anything about my products, because that would turn into a whole fucking thing that I don't have the emotional capital to deal with. I don't have the energy to deal with it. So yeah, I just occasionally, like, somebody would be like, hey, this person said this on this forum, you should look at it. I'm like, give me a synopsis. Like, should I?
This happens
should
constantly,
I?
man. Did you see this?
Yeah,
no,
it's like,
I didn't. I don't really want to. Like, just please.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, is this? I mean, like, should I intervene? No. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, that's fine.
Well, intervening as an artisan is a no-win situation either,
I
because
found the same thing. Like, when
Correct. That's why I
Yeah.
don't
people are
say
criticizing,
anything.
I find you're just like, in our situation is, if they're criticizing us enough, I can try and take them down from their position. I feel I'm just giving them more rope to hang me with. If I was to have a conversation with someone, it would be in private. And I say that all the time publicly. If you ever have a problem with the way Carve is running, reach out to me directly and we'll have a conversation about it. But I'm not going to get into a shit slinging match where everyone can see the shit being slung. I'm just not interested in doing that.
Yeah,
Good.
Scott's very good at it, and it's something I definitely have to work on. I have moments where I could take criticism. There's times where I can take criticism all day long, and I feel like if people have shut up,
You
Scott.
have light sense strength, Heather.
I have what?
You're too light for me.
I have times, and there's things that I can handle, and it doesn't bother me. But there's other times, and maybe it depends on my mood. Maybe it depends on the subject. There's other times that criticism is very hard. It's very something I have to work on. Yes, that's right. He's laughing at me because
I am.
To me, it depends on the
because-
context, though. Because, like, let's say...
Because I just tell you, like, hey, stop.
Yeah.
Just don't read this shit. Stop, like, obsessively looking for reviews and people talking so you can say shit. Just
like
do your thing.
Yeah, and I think I have enough confidence at this point that I am much better at it. But when when you make something and you do your best, and I have things that I'm very focused on, not just making quality, but I am very hyper focused. My hyper focus is safety. Like it's just because I have such sensitive skin and so many skin issues. Safety is 100% always my thing. Um, and that is really like the first part of formulating for me, and then performance and everything else falls in after that. And so to tie all them together is a little bit, harder. But so when I do get criticism, I definitely can take some of it better than others, but it is something that I still work on. I'm sure there's people that are going to hear this and be like, bitch, please, you need to work on a lot of it, but that's okay. I mean, I am aware of that, and it is something that, I do try to, and sometimes I could take it and it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, there's things like my sense strength. I know my sense strength is light and people can complain about it, but ultimately for me it's a safety issue.
Same.
People who have sensitive skin can't tolerate high doses of fragrance. I mean,
Yep.
it's just how it is. So therefore my soaps are never going to be incredibly strong. If you like strong soaps, there's plenty of makers who make strong soaps.
Right. And if you have skin that can handle it, that's amazing. Not everybody does.
Not everybody does.
And we have to make things to, like, we're not making products only for people that probably won't get burned by our products. We have to make our products
Right?
for, like, for the people
Yeah.
that are certainly going to be burned. And so how the hell do we prevent that? It's
Yeah.
like, that's, because it's like I got an email or a Facebook message yesterday of a guy who was having a reaction to one of my scents, and like I hate it when that happens. I truly do. It's no scent that I have in production right now is more than like, I mean, it's less than 1% as far as what I'm aware of. People that contact me and they're like, "Hey, is this normal?" I'm like, "No, that's not normal. Don't use this anymore." Uh, but even that is like, I don't, much like I know you don't. I don't want anybody to be unhappy with shit that I make.
Right.
And if it's something like that that sucks. But there's only so much we can do. Like the more complicated a fragrance is, the more ingredients there are. I mean, everybody's skin's different. Everybody's physiology is different. And which is where things like essential oil onlys really pisses me off so much, because that doesn't fucking matter
It's
at
safer
all.
though, Scott.
Yeah, sure is. Sure is. I want your next soap to just be called Clove.
Oh,
Just,
Exactly.
just
Oh,
Clove.
God.
All
Cinnamon
natural.
clove.
I
All
wouldn't even
natural.
go. I wouldn't go that far, but you can take it that far if you want. But yeah, just cinnamon and clove,
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
higher fragrance concentration than you normally use.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it is hard, and you are very you are very good at being able to ignore it, because I have a hard time. Um, I definitely have a hard time. I mean, criticism is good. We have to listen to the feedback. What I try to work on though, because no matter how I react at the moment, later I usually still can look at the criticism and try to judge if it's something I truly need to like really consider, or if it's things that other people have mentioned, then obviously, if you're getting more than one feedback with the same thing, then you need to look at that. But what I've tried to focus on is my initial reaction, because that's all we can control, right? Like really, we can't control how it makes us feel. We can only control how we react to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I have tried to learn
Do
to
you know
work on.
my advice has been the same forever?
Yeah,
Just
don't
don't
read
say
it.
anything. No,
Yeah, you're
if you're
really
gonna
good
fucking
at
read
that
it,
too.
just don't say anything. Like,
Yeah,
just
no.
go do something else. You don't have to
It
say
boils
anything.
away at me.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I know that's there, and I know that criticism without me addressing it is there, and people will believe what that person says. I really struggle with that.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you don't read it, then you don't know about it, and then it
Yep.
doesn't exist in your brain.
Yeah. No, you might be right. You might be right.
That's where you're really good at it. That's what I'm saying. Like that's definitely a pro for you because and like that was something that
Is it?
I
Is disregarding the opinions of my customer base really a pro?
yes. Yes, because because if like you said, if people have an issue and they contact you directly, you're going to see it. You're not, I people tag me in their YouTube reviews and things like that, and because I do appreciate customers taking their time, and let's face it, they're taking their time to do a review, make a video, whatever it may be, even if it's like staging that perfect shave of the day video or shot. I mean, I try to let people know I appreciate the time that they take to highlight my product because I really do. Without things like that, in this hobby, that kind of helps, get your name out there and, make customers aware. So I am appreciative of it, and I want to make sure that people are aware that I actually see it and things like that. So I have a hard time ignoring it, um, but the bad comes with the good. So while I try to acknowledge all the good that I see, it's hard to not acknowledge the bad that you see as well. So, you have to take it and live with it and, make adjustments to it. And for me, I'm stubborn. So I'm like, oh, you think that sucks? Oh, just watch this. Look, I'll show you. That's my
Spite,
personality.
spite is an excellent motivator. You just don't have to tell them about it.
I know. That's where I'm an external processor, though. See?
Okay.
Fair. I do want to take a quick moment to say that I appreciate all of my customers that take the time to to record reviews and write reviews and take shave of the day photos. Thank you so much. I'm not trying to discount anybody's opinions. I'm just saying that for me, and I can circle this straight back to my anxiety if you want. I don't want to do that. Um, but I'm not looking or reading or writing, which perhaps is more liberating for you as a reviewer. Like, say whatever the fuck you want. I'm not gonna know about it. So you don't feel like you have to pull any punches on my account. Um, yeah.
Okay. On that
So,
bombshell.
it, yeah. So, with you saying, like, obviously that's one of your like coping mechanisms for that particular issue. So
Yeah.
let's circle back to like the recent, like, what's going on in the world, literally the world, not just here in the U.S. Um, Everything that people are dealing with COVID. So one of the reasons that we kind of wanted to hit this topic was because there is obviously a spike in anxiety, depression, people feeling isolated because let's face it, physically we're
We
much more
are
isolated.
isolated. Yeah.
Yeah, physically we're much more isolated than, most of us are used to. So, we've kind of hit on this. What for you, are you finding anything other than like focusing on like say your house and renovations? Like what is anything else working for you? Are you doing any sort of communication or video
Le-
chats or
Less than I should. A lot less than I should. So I should be keeping in touch with people more, but I'm not. Uh, when I'm gonna refer to this as my survival headspace. When I'm in this survival headspace, and I'm not suggesting anybody else do this. I'm not a mental health care professional in any way. For me, what I have to do is shrink my world, uh, metaphorically speaking, uh, is just shrink it so that my focus. There's less opportunity for my focus on whatever it may be that I'm focused on to be broken. Which, again, like I said earlier, it makes my correspondence with customers even worse. I'm already terrible at it. I'm sorry, everybody, for that.
Because you love those emails.
Uh, it, but it's also like personal relationships, like friendships. Like I almost lose the ability to maintain those. Like I completely isolate and shrink my world because I don't know, it starts to get overwhelming, and then it feels, I don't even know how to describe how it feels other than it feels really difficult, like too difficult. So I don't do it. And I don't suggest that anybody else in the world do that. It's really bad for relationships, probably bad for you as a human. Probably shouldn't do it. It's what I do because I have to.
So is that something that you feel like would help you though if you, I mean, is it
No.
something that like you're doing it because it's easier to not do it versus you're doing it because you feel like it's better for you?
It's more of like I feel like it's gonna. All right, this is gonna be a terrible analogy I'm about to make. I'm sorry to every friend I have in the world for this analogy I'm about to make. But today I was working on my kitchen and I had planned to pull all of my cabinet doors today and start sanding them. That was the goal for today, was figure out if I was going to use liquid deglosser or if I'm going to sand them all before I paint them. That was the goal today. I got a new light fixture in, and I wanted to replace the old light fixture before I started doing this so that I could have more light and it would just be better. That was supposed to be like a 20-minute thing. Old light fixture down, new light fixture up, done. Took the old light fixture down, and it's like all of the drywall around it, like this far around where the new fixture was going to be, was totally fucked up. So I had to fix it. Uh, and what was supposed to take 20 minutes took like 7 hours, and it derailed my whole fucking day. I haven't taken a single cabinet door off. And unfortunately, for everybody I know that I should stay in touch with much better than I do, that's what staying in touch with people feels like. Is like I wake up and I've got a general plan every day, or I'm going to find that plan within like the first hour of being awake. Like my first hour of being awake sets the tone for my whole day. Like if I don't put on real pants, the day's fucked. It's not, nothing's going to happen. Uh, it's true. I have to put on real pants within an hour of waking up every day, or the day it's gone. Like nothing's happening that day. Uh, but that is what like getting a phone call or getting emails feels like. It's like, okay, this whatever I was planning to do, I have to shift my focus completely to something else and then try and ramp back up to what it is I wanted to do. And it's super unhealthy. I really don't recommend this. This is just something I have to do to survive. Which is why when I do respond to emails, it's gonna be all of them, like just all of them at one time, and at this point it's like 2 weeks worth, and I'm sorry about that, y'all.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's not healthy. Uh,
You probably shouldn't listen to the criticism about your lack of response to emails, then.
okay, I do have to. I mean, I do have to talk to customers at some point. I'm so sorry I'm bad at it, y'all. I would love to have a CSR or a virtual assistant or somebody to do it, but nobody has the answers but me, and I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. That's definitely the hard part in our field. Definitely, for sure.
Yeah, because I made
Jack,
all
have
this
you?
shit up. Nobody else knows the shit I made up.
It's true, yeah.
That's more like doing like a SOP. Like if you sit down and write an SOP, I mean,
There's
like
no SOP.
there's got to be like a general thing that we could do. I mean, I feel you because it's the same thing. Sometimes it's fly by the seat of your pants and you're like, sure, I could do that. Or no way, dude. I don't know what you're thinking, but there's a little bit of a general response to some things, right?
Sometimes.
When am I going to restock? When I get to it. See?
Yeah,
That's a general response.
yeah, but people don't like that
No, they
response.
don't.
People don't like the response I really want to say, which the response I always want to respond with is an hour later than I would have before I got this email. Like this email just added an hour.
Yeah. Well,
I know you feel that one. I know
yeah.
you
I know
do.
Jack definitely feels that one more than I do, even.
Not at all, no.
Yeah.
Of course not.
Yeah. So, Jack, would you say, have you had any, like, because you at least are, the two of us are fortunate enough to not be isolated in our homes alone, where Scott pretty much is. So he has even this extra step of isolation than most of us have, being, he doesn't have, anybody that he's stuck there with other than Brisket and the cats. So, um, so do you have, what have you learned? Like, what have been your coping mechanisms while you've been kind of stuck
The
in?
same as they always are, to, when Scott was explaining what his coping mechanisms are, it made me realize that I do exactly the same thing. I get obsessed with things, and when I get obsessed with things, I set goals based on those things I get obsessed with. And I feel like a failure when I don't achieve them. It feels like I've done something like, why did you distract me from that? Because this is what I wanted to do. Um,
Oh man,
yeah,
I feel that one.
I'm like that even more now. I can't go out. I mean, despite bits of social anxiety, I will pretty much always force myself to go out because that's really the way of getting over it, right?
Exposure therapy. Yep.
But quite honestly, now it's small, stupid things to look forward to. Like I've been trying my hardest not to drink beer early on in the day. Frankly, I've been trying so fucking hard because once you get to that 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock beer,
Yes.
that is a slippery slope you're on there because that then becomes
Yeah.
acceptable, and then 12 o'clock beer becomes acceptable. I look forward to that. It's not
Yes.
that I need beer to make me happy. I need variation to make me happy in that instance, and that's how I'm kind of dealing with it to a degree. But I mean, I'd be lying if I said going outside really gives me some release. It doesn't really. I've never been that sort of person. All it does is it makes me fight what I fight most of the time anyway, and that's the mild inability to talk to people, which has gotten a bit harder since I came here. It's funny because people will think you're speaking English, like why don't they understand you? Honestly, it's the most fucking frustrating thing because I've been speaking this way all of my life, and all of the people around me have been speaking this way. And if I can ask someone a question, I think most of it is the fact that it kind of it, it takes people off guard. They don't expect that accent to come out of my mouth, so they're kind of like, "What?" But sometimes I get it to where they just don't understand me at all. And what that'll do is that makes me just reluctant to talk to people because it's like, this again, you make me feel like an idiot, like I'm speaking to you in Mandarin or something like that. Yeah, it's a pretty strange situation. My coping mechanisms remain the same. It's to stay focused and try and achieve small incremental goals. It's funny because when I was younger, I used to just bury my head in the sand and play video games because nothing was really a problem. But as an adult, problems become more apparent because they can stop you from living in houses. Um, So
Exactly.
yeah, it can be quite strange.
Yeah. And I imagine people who have English as a second, I mean, at least you have an accent, but at least you're speaking
Yeah,
English. So I imagine people who actually English is a second language to them who have a very strong accent. I can imagine I work in the medical field and we do have doctors and nurses from, all over the world here working in the US who
yeah.
literally come here to work and to practice. And sometimes I get on the phone with someone with a strong accent and it's really hard. And I feel bad when I have to ask them to repeat, but I notice when I ask them if they could repeat something that I notice the hesitation in that. So I can imagine that constant um,
Well, the thing is, it's not like I'm
that
speaking.
constant feedback is
It's not like
hard.
I'm speaking broken English.
No, that's what I'm saying. You're speaking English. It's just with an
Yeah,
accent. So I imagine people who are speaking English as a second language, who have a major accent on top of it. I can imagine that's definitely probably a like a big self-esteem issue for some
yeah.
people.
It sucks, but at least I'm not Irish or Scottish, right? It could be way worse than it actually is. So
That's
yeah,
true. That's true. Or you could be Australian. Sometimes their accent's very
yeah.
strong.
It can be.
Although Australian accent's pretty cool. I know for myself, I have been trying to actually go outside. We live in the county, so we have a couple of acres, and so I've been trying to take like even if it's a short walk outside because it's we're getting nicer weather, sun's out, things like that. So I feel better if I get a little bit of sun and like kind of get some fresh air and just take a breather. Even if I just take 10 minutes and go sit out on my patio in
It's
the
93
sun.
degrees here today. I want to peel
Yeah,
my
but 10
skin off.
minutes.
No, no, no. I want
Yeah.
to peel my skin off. It's the worst thing. Honestly.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I lived in Phoenix for a bit. I feel you on that. It's horrible. You can't escape it.
No.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. For me, it's not. I mean, yesterday it was like 85, but it was like
Oh
nice and
shit.
sunny. Yeah, it was nice and sunny, no humidity. So it was pretty warm, but it was like nice. It was comfortable. No bugs are out yet. I've been trying to do that, but of course I am an extrovert, so I am used to being around people more. I'm very close with some of my family, my cousins, in particular. There's a group of four of us that we get together quite frequently, every like 3 or 4 weeks maybe, and do dinner or something to get together. But we talk all the time, and so and we usually see each other shortly in between that even. And so we've been trying to do FaceTime, but of course, my schedule is all
yeah.
completely different than everybody else's because I work evenings or, my evenings are busy like with the business. So, um, not as frequently as I have, but yeah, I'm trying to stay still in touch with people that I talk to all the time but I'm missing my kids. I mean, my kids are adults and they're 20 and 23, and I'm glad they don't listen to this. But like I almost cried. Like my son almost had me in tears the day before Easter because I told him we were going to do a DoorDash Easter, and I'm like, you guys can pick whatever you want me to make, your favorite thing, and I'm going to bring you guys, dinner, and I'll just leave it at your door. And my oldest, my 23-year-old, the day before Easter called me and he's like, I didn't really realize what you exactly meant by DoorDash. And Jenna, his girlfriend, just explained it to me. So are we really not going to have Easter dinner at home this year? And I'm just like, no. I mean, and he's 23. And so I'm like, so it kind of sucks. I mean, I'm fortunate that I'm not stuck at home with a 5-year-old, but at the same time, I miss my
I'm
kids a
stuck at home
lot
with a
because,
basset hound. It's like a 5-year-old, honestly. It's like the most demanding thing in my life.
oh man, I do miss my kids and I miss my family, but I still work. I work in a hospital, so I am still getting out some because I do have to, still work there.
At
So
least there's
I am
that.
still getting some interaction. Yeah, I am still getting some interaction. So I'm pretty sure that helps. If I was literally just stuck at home with nothing, it would definitely bother me a lot more than it
Well, it's
is.
funny
But
because although this is my full-time job, really, the the only friends I have are people I've made within this community. And it's funny because if I equate that to something that people would typically make friends over, it's quite strange. But at the same time, like those are pretty much the only people that aren't my wife I have, and I'm incredibly thankful
Yeah.
for them. Like I talk to JR pretty much every day, and it might even just be like a throwaway comment, but
Yeah.
like that brings me a degree of sanity that I think if I didn't have
Yeah.
that, I'd feel way more lonely than I am. So as much as I may seem bitter and complain about certain aspects, I'd be way more unhappy without this community than I am with the community. I'd appreciate if people stopped whining at me, though. That'd be fantastic.
I think that we are fortunate that we are in a field and in a hobby that, I mean, there's assholes everywhere, obviously, occasionally. I mean, I
Obviously,
haven't,
occasionally.
I have a new admirer this week, so, um, so I totally see both sides of it, but ultimately in the long run there's a lot more positive in the community than I think negative. I've been able to make friends with several makers. Some I am definitely closer or like friends with versus just acquaintances that I'm comfortable talking with. Scott, for instance, I mean, he's somebody that I've been able to like show my crazy side to, and he doesn't judge me.
I
Not
just
much
give you
anyway.
very practical advice on how to
Yeah.
stop being crazy, and you don't take it,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
that.
Or he's like, listen to me. You boss me around. It's my time to boss you around. I don't boss you around, by the way. I don't know where that came from. Um, so yeah, we are very fortunate. So this is going to bring me to my final topic that I want to talk about, or my final
We're
point
almost at 2 hours,
is
by the way.
yeah, we're wrapping this up.
Yeah.
So I think that for people who are listening to this, if you're dealing with this a lot more than normal, a lot of people have increased, the isolation, the anxiety, feeling down, depression, things like that. Even if they're not typical for you and they're situational, according to what's going on. Try to make an effort to reach out to people. Our community is very social. We're very active. People are very active in
There's
general.
also some
Do a
very
live.
retrospective thinkers in this community that can help you. Like, I've had conversations with people about things absolutely nothing related to this, and
Right.
their insight in my life has actually been very, very useful. So if you ever are in situations where you're like, I have no one to turn to, in reality, there probably is quite a few people you could turn to within this community. It's important to remember.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of people in the hobby. Sorry. I think there's a lot of people in the hobby who have become friends and talk about things outside of wet shaving, obviously, or who know people fairly well because they've been active in the community for so long. So, definitely reach out to somebody, even if you hop on to an IG Live or a Facebook Live, and do some socializing there. I have noticed that more people are doing that, including myself, but more people are doing them to try to stay active, try to get the feedback and things like that. So there's a lot going on in our community, but some things that I wanted to also make people aware of, if they're not, is a lot of states have implemented some sort of mental health program, especially based around COVID. And so there's a lot of state resources. A lot of states have a specific COVID page on their state website. And a lot of those are including now some sort of mental health program, tips, resources. A lot of your county health departments are also doing the same thing. I work for a hospital, and I know our hospital is been very active and very proactive in the community on trying to get resources out for people, a way for people to have like hook them up with some sort of therapy, counseling, any kind of resources or suggestions that may help them. So make sure that you reach out. A lot of these things are free. Also, a lot of employers provide EAP programs. It's an employee assistant program. There may be a limit, but it's sort of like a counseling, and a lot of these are doing virtual counseling right now. So you at least have somebody that you can kind of like bounce things off of. You may already be familiar with that counselor if it's something you've already been actively doing, but a lot of them are also free. My particular employer provides, I think it's 10 visits a year that's free. So there's nothing wrong with reaching out and talking whenever you feel like, you may need help, or you may need, you're feeling a shift and maybe a funk that you can't get out of. That's one of the reasons that we wanted to talk about this topic now, is because I feel like now more than ever, mental health it's always a big topic, and it's always an important topic. And I feel like men in general, it's a taboo topic, but men in general are probably less open, I think, than women. And so, bringing
Correct.
Scott on, bringing Scott on, it's something that I knew he was passionate about. It's something that I just felt like the time was right. So I'm very fortunate and lucky that Scott was agreeable to come on and talk with us. So, Scott, I really appreciate your time and, kind of opening yourself up to us and talking about it. I know it's something that is very personal, and it's something that you've become really sort of passionate about it. Really.
Yeah. Well, so I'm from the South, and especially I'll say especially in the South, just because it's where I have the most experience existing. But talking about your feelings, it's more of it's like if you like twist your ankle, it's just fucking walk it off. Like, shut up, just
Yeah.
stop it, shut up, go do whatever. Uh, if I were to add some final thoughts here, mental health is, I mean, I'm not gonna it's as important as physical health, and we all handle trauma differently, but the trauma of something like what's going on outside right now, especially if current models are correct and we hit wave 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, this is this is like going through something physically traumatic. It's not trying to be doomy about it, but it's not something that's just you just brush off and go about your life. Like, there will be lasting effects on most people, and there's always, especially with older generations, there's such a stigma around talking to somebody, be it a therapist or a psychiatrist, and that I would say, that'd be like not going to the doctor if something was wrong. But I know enough people that don't fucking go to the doctor if something's physically wrong with them either.
Yeah.
So there's the only shame in it is the shame you bring with it. That was worded poorly. I have a better thought in there. There's no shame in it unless you feel ashamed about it. And if you feel ashamed about it, that's all the more fucking reason to talk to somebody. Like, if you're feeling shame about shit you're feeling to the extent that you can't talk to people about it, fucking talk to somebody about it. It's like, it'll be hard, probably, but still got to do it. Like, if you break a bone and don't go to the doctor for 3 weeks, and they have to re-break it, that's worse than if you just went to the damn doctor when you broke it.
Yeah, it's not going to heal right, and that's kind
Right.
of the same analogy, right? So
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm
yeah.
trying to get at. Is trauma is trauma, be it mental or
Yes.
physical, and the sooner you treat something, the better the healing process is going to be. Because some of us will feel this a lot more acutely than others, but we're all going to be dealing with something for a while,
Yeah.
and it's okay. Like it's okay to
Yeah.
feel shit. It's okay to talk to people. And that's it. I'm off my soapbox. I hated saying that. God.
Are there any soaps inside
Jack,
there?
No. I've got like a disaster reserve in the basement, and that's it. I've probably got like 30 total soaps.
Man.
I know. Uh,
Jack, do you have any final thoughts?
Things are only difficult if you continue to make them difficult for yourself. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a likelihood that if you have those problems, you're probably going to struggle with them for a lot of your life. But those problems are made so much easier by, even if it's having one person that might understand you, having some sort of outlet is so useful, because for a long time in my life I kept it very tight to my chest, and I don't really operate like that anymore. Like, I discuss it openly, and quite honestly, even if it's discussing me openly and I'm not actively talking with like a psychiatrist or a counselor, just the ability to word what my problem is, even if no one is listening, just for me to understand it and for me how to approach it correctly based on what I need within myself, is a huge step forward. But my advice to anyone that's kind of going through something, or if you ever go through something, is I can assure you that there is almost likely, almost definitely someone in your life that is willing to lend you an ear. And even if all they need to do is lend you an ear and not give you a solution, it's going to make you feel quite a lot better. I can assure you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think especially right now, um, there's a lot of people who are having, like, even I'm not I've had anxiety, but as far as like depression, I don't typically have depressive issues. But even a few weeks ago, I just, like, nothing that I did, like, I just was in a funk all week, and I could feel myself starting to, kind of get into that funnel. And everybody's kind of going through that,
Yeah.
and it's, we're going on weeks. I mean, we're going on months. Some places 6 to 8 weeks already at this point. So there's definitely nothing abnormal with feeling, having different feelings now than what you're used to, even. So for people who've never had any issues. Well, that is it for tonight. That is all I had. Scott, again, thank you so much. I really
oh,
appreciate
you're
you
welcome.
taking time
Absolutely.
to talk to us. Um, I don't really have any plugs myself. I am going to be doing a raffle for the healers and the essentials. I have around $1,000 to donate to each charity, so I'm very, very, like, just blown away by that. The support that we had for the project was fantastic. I'll do the final donation after the raffle. The raffle is going to have, each set will have a custom bowl, matching bowl and brush for it. And 100% of those proceeds will be going to the organizations as well. So Feeding America and Samaritan's Purse. So I'm really excited about that. The project has been very well received, and I'm very thankful. Scott, do you have any plugs? I know how much you love doing that.
No, I'll make things eventually, and when I do, they'll be on my website. And if you want to buy them, you can.
Scott's going to announce his next brush drop right now.
I'm absolutely not.
Jack, do you have any?
Titanium has been pushed back until the 15th. There's a couple.
It's
Oh
unbelievable.
man, it's unacceptable. It's just not allowed. Reason we decided to do that was because we've had previous criticisms that we've internalized and actually considered that it's incredibly valid that if we sell something to you, it needs to just be able to go out, and the titanium is definitely the biggest start of that. So we're not going to release it until we're happy with the numbers of stock we have. So our aim is the 15th. The 15th seems doable. With the aluminum, on the other hand, I touched on that briefly, but the reason why we've not been doing huge batches is because the second batch outside of our test batch, we sent off a lot of parts, and a lot of parts came back in scrap. So we have about $5,000 of aluminum parts that we weren't able to sell. As a small business, we just can't take that risk. I accept that it's frustrating that you can't get your hands on what you want because it sells out in a minute, but the idea of us being able to have all of this capital that we can't send to one person and just have it all anodized and just get rid of all of it and everyone is happy, we just can't take that financial risk. So we're going to be incrementally increasing the batch size again once we have a little bit more trust in our more recently acquired anodizer. But the far afield goal is just doing in-house anodizing, which we will do, but that's quite a lot of effort, and there's a lot of other things we need to deal with before that. But yeah, those are really my plugs.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. And of course, I'm highly looking forward to the titanium. So excited about that. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much. And this wraps up episode, what, 9?
9.
8? 9. 9. I knew that. I was just checking. All right, everybody, have a good evening, and thank you for listening. Scott, you are you're on IG under Declaration Grooming, Facebook under Declaration Grooming, and your website,
Probably,
right?
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah, okay.
I assume so.
Okay, awesome. Everybody, if you are living under a rock and have not yet heard of Declaration, their brushes or their soap, make sure that you give them a check. And Scott, you are currently in stock at Maggart's?
No.
No, not at all?
No,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure everything's gone everywhere, but I haven't checked in a long time.
Okay.
So maybe somewhere.
He might be in stock at Maggart's.
Have a look.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night, guys.
Thanks for having me on. Good night.